Blumenthal had an interesting event recently called TrueCon 2023. Now, during this event, I don't know how Matt goes to these things and stays more so calm. There's no way I could sit through all of this, these events. But recently, he was at this event, TrueCon, and Rachel Maddow was one of the speakers at this event. And so kudos to Max Blumenthal for standing up to Rachel, because I don't think anyone else would have done this. Well, maybe Jose, but I don't think they would have invited Jose Vega to this event. But standing up to Rachel Maddow for the way that over the past, 6 years, she russiagated the hell out of you. The hell out of you. So Max did confront her. Now he goes on to say, Rachel doesn't do Q&A from the audience. So I had to find another way to ask her about the relentless promotion of the most discredited hoaxes of Russiagate, from the Steele dossier to Russian bounties. She peered silently at my badge and security quickly pounced on me. Let's start with the video. We'll start from here. Here we go.
Bent on overthrowing the U.S. government. And members of Congress who were sympathetic...
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid. Can you explain why you promoted the Steele... Why did you promote the Steele dossier, which has been proven to be a lie? Why did you promote the lie of Russian bounties?
Come on, let's go.
Can you ever be held accountable for the lies you told Americans for years and years and years? You lied to Americans for years.
Let's go.
Silence is violence, Rachel.
You're out. You're out. Get his badge.
Let's go.
There you go. You want my badge?
Thank you.
Here you go. I'm walking out with
you.
you.
Go this way.
Which
Elevator
one?
right here.
Rachel Maddow refusing to answer questions about lying about the Steele dossier, lying about Russian bounties, and doing a paranoid speech claiming Nazism is afoot in America. And I'm being thrown out by security now. There was no Q&A. If there was Q&A, I would have politely asked a question.
So let's go back to the beginning. Watch this.
Bent on overthrowing the U.S. government. And members of Congress who were sympathetic...
Rachel, this speech is boring and paranoid. Can you explain why you promote...
So he said the speech is boring and paranoid. So because she didn't take Q&A, that's why he walked up to her. Now, Max was pretty bold, I would say. That's a pretty bold move. Because even Jose Vega doesn't walk up to the speakers. He stands up from where he is. But Max was like, nah, fuck this. Now watch this. Notice how she looks down at his badge.
The Steele Why did you promote the Steele dossier, which has been proven to be a lie? Why did you promote the lie of Russian bounties?
Come on, let's go.
Can you ever be held accountable for the lies you told Americans for years and years and years?
And it's important to point this out because she doesn't answer this question. She doesn't answer this question, and she hasn't been held accountable for it either. So you can't, I don't know, you can't fault Max for that. He also goes on to say here, my attempt to question Maddow took place at the Lockheed Martin and Palantir sponsored Truman Project's National Conference. She had just given a paranoid and dull speech about Nazi infiltration of World War II era USA and how it parallels the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory here. So here was Rachel Maddow again, once again, Russia, Russia, Russia. It's like that episode of the Brady Bunch. Well, Jan goes, everybody's always talking about Marsha. It's always Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. It's like that. Like she continues to bring this up because she has nothing else to run on. She talked about Russiagate for years. For years. Has she apologized for that? She argued, didn't she argue before in front of Congress that she's not news, she's infotainment? Well, if that's the case, why is she giving a speech at this event? Now, Max went on to say, because there was another interruption that he had here, where he mentioned At Truman Kahn panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion featuring Pentagon officials, I asked how many equitable bombs produced by conference sponsors Lockheed Martin were dropped on kids of color in Palestine and Syria. So listen to this. This is interesting. Oh my God, I tell you. Oh boy, kudos to Max here. He was letting them have it.
Hello, Max Blumenthal, the Gray Zone. My pronouns are Trump Russia. Lockheed Martin has been identified as one of the most diverse employers in the country, and I was wondering if you knew by any chance how many products or weapons produced by Lockheed Martin, diversity and equity and inclusion bombs have been dropped on the children of Palestine, Yemen, or Syria. And also, do you happen to know off the top if any non-binary U.S. Navy divers were used in blowing up the Nord Stream pipelines?
Thank you. If anyone has that information, feel free to raise on that. You can give me the scoop too. That's build another question.
And they never want to answer the question about Nord Stream, by the way. They never want to go down that road. To send you a reminder of how bad Rachel Maddow did the russiagating thing. Let me come here. I actually want to go to this one first. This is an old school one. This is when Jimmy was on TYT. Look, they were talking about this back then. This is Rachel Maddow, all Russia, all the time. And this video was 4 years ago. Just to give you a little bit of a reminder how much she talked about this.
Here's Rachel Maddow. You want to see how bad it's gotten? Someone put this together from just one episode of her show from last March, and I'm going to play it for you. Here we go.
Vladimir Putin, Russia, hate Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, the Russians, Russian, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, Russians rush against the U.S. The Russians, Russian government scheme. The Russians, Vladimir Putin, Putin and Russia, Moscow, Russia, the Russians, Putin, Russia, the Soviet Empire, the second of the 20th century's great evils, communism, Russia, assault by Russia,
Putin despises the West in general and the United States in particular, the Soviet Empire. Russia. They're the adversary. They want to bring us down, the Soviet Union.
Okay, that's all for that show. That was from one show.
That's crazy, isn't it? One episode. You know, if you say something enough, you say it multiple times over and over, eventually people will start to believe it. Little trick there.
So, and I just want to let you know, all that propaganda being pushed by the mainstream news and the establishment press and Rachel Maddow specifically, you know what the result of that is? If you go to my computer, the Gallup just did a poll. Less than 1% of Americans believe Russia is a top problem. Less than 1% of Americans do. So when I say this on the show that no one in America cares about this, I'm not making it up. I actually travel to parts of the country, and I know that no one cares about this stuff, right? So this is a completely made up propaganda. And I'll just show you a little bit from this Gallup poll. It says less than 1% of Americans consider the situation with Russia a top problem for the United States, according to a Gallup poll released on July 18th. The number of Americans who consider Russia to be the biggest problem facing the country has not surpassed 1% in any of the past 7 months, the pollster found. While major news outlets have relentlessly pushed the Russian interference narrative for nearly 2 years, Americans remain overwhelmingly more concerned about domestic issues, with concerns about immigration and the government topping the list of the biggest problems. The lack of proof and the negligible concern from Americans on Russia issue may be contributing to, get this, to President Donald Trump's resilience in presidential approval polls.
She was basically a State Department mouthpiece. And since the majority of Americans didn't really care about it, then it's like, we got to continue saying it. Like, we have to keep saying it, because if we don't, then I don't know. If we don't, then it's not going to sink into people's heads. So we got to keep saying it. Now, Max also showed, I want to bring this up as well. Max also showed the sign that was outside the event. The Truman Project was created to cultivate rapidly pro-war, socially progressive Democratic politicians and policymakers. It's sponsored by a who's who of arm makers and security contractors. Look who's on the sign: Lockheed Martin, Palantir, Beacon Global Strategies, and Blue Star Strategies. So you know what this is all about. He shows the badges there. She's taking pictures of himself as they're coming to him. I was trying to find the picture. There was one picture. We could just go back to that video I wanted to show you. There was something that she said after he gave his statement. She said, yeah, here we go. So that's her looking at his badge, his name tag. Let me figure out what outlet this guy works with. And so obviously she sees that he doesn't work with the New York Times or the Washington Post. He doesn't support the State Department. So she's like, oh, okay, so let me not take this guy seriously. But listen to what she says here. This is after Max was withdrawn. Listen to this.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
You know what that means, right? You see that? This is what has happened to the Democratic Party. This is the elite smugness, condescending behavior that people, or more so the people that have been pushed to the front lines of the Democratic Party, this is what they have become. Smug, cocky, elite. What's wrong with Substack? What's wrong with Substack? There's more credibility with people who are writing for Substack than people writing for the New York Times. There's more credibility with people writing for Substack than people on MSNBC like you, Rachel. That's what the Democratic Party has become. Elite, snobby, smug. It's a hot mess. But there seems to be no accountability. Even The Guardian wrote about this. Now, this was 2019. Will Rachel Maddow face a reckoning over her Trump-Russia coverage? Even The Guardian had to do it. Listen to this. The worst kept secret in liberal media ecosystem is that Donald Trump is great for business. Rebranded for the resistance, liberal newspapers gobbled up thousands of new subscribers while local outlets die across America, unable to feast on the Trump mania. So we have to remember Trump was really good for ratings during that time. It goes on to say, at the top of the heap is none other than MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. Maddow, of course, was not alone. The New Yorker once ran a cover in Russian, a stunt that will age as terribly as all Cold War era red baiting has to our 21st century eyes. Last year, New York's magazine, Jonathan Chait, basically posited. Yes. Basically posited in another cover story that Trump may have been a Russian asset since 1987. CNN was a daily carousel of Russiagate pundits. Then it goes on to say down here, this part is important. Still, it's abundantly clear now that many liberal outlets overdid it in their fervor. And Maddow, MSNBC's ratings juggernaut of the Trump era, is the embodiment of this overzealousness. The Mueller investigation was covered more on MSNBC than any other television network and was mentioned virtually every day in 2018. No twist was too minuscule or outlandish for Maddow. Every night seemingly brought another nail in the coffin of the soon-to-be dead Trump presidency. This is The Guardian called this out. MSNBC did it the most. Let's go here. There was the time Maddow theorized that Trump was curiously well-versed in specific Russian talking points, strongly implying press briefings were dictated from the Kremlin. An American missile attack on Syria, Maddow concurred, could have been orchestrated by Putin himself. During a cold snap, the Russian government could shut down our power supply. Putin could blackmail Trump into pulling troops from Russia's border. Maddow was not only certain that Russians had rigged it. On air, she would talk about the continuing operation, the idea that the Kremlin was controlling the Trump presidency itself. Maddow is much smarter than this. But the siren song of ratings is too difficult for a TV personality to ignore, especially when a television network is transformed from an also ran into a top contender. It was all about ratings. Let's continue this up because it's getting us a lot of ratings. Who cares if we're telling the truth? There was never any accountability. In reference to the incident that Max went to, even Newsweek covered this incident. And this is really interesting, the way they covered this. Even Newsweek, video of Rachel Maddow being confronted by Russiagate activists goes viral. First of all, look at how they define Max Blumenthal. First of all, they don't put his name in the title. That's intentional, by the way. 2, they refer to him as a Russiagate activist instead of a journalist. That's on purpose, to make it seem like he's someone that simps for Russia. You see this? This is horrible. It says here, blogger Max Blumenthal took on MSNBC host at TrueCon 2024. They refer to Max Blumenthal as a blogger instead of a journalist to diminish his credibility. If you can diminish his credibility, then people won't take the work that he's doing seriously. Isn't Max Blumenthal an investigative journalist? They know that people don't take blogger as seriously. That's why they use that term. Public event by the Truman Center held at the Marriott Marquis in D.C. This was Friday, June 2nd. Keynote speaker Maddow gave her speech to a room full of attendees when Blumenthal walked up the stage to complain about her coverage of the Steele dossier, yada, yada. And then they go on to say here, this is interesting. Blumenthal also attacked Maddow over coverage of Russian bounties paid to the Taliban leaders for dead American soldiers in Afghanistan. U.S. intelligence said in 2021, it found no conclusive evidence to support the claim. The American blogger has published articles on the Gray Zone website, which has promoted pro-Russian propaganda and content sympathetic to authoritarian regimes. Look at this. Here's the smear. Let me highlight this. Whoops. Here's the smear. He has also appeared on Russia state-owned news outlets RT and Sputnik. So have a lot of people. A lot of people have appeared on RT. A lot of people have appeared on Sputnik. But they're not going to tell their audience that. They want their audience to think that this is some far out there outlet that only like these crazy radical people go on to. No, they've talked to so many people. Are you kidding me? There's the smear. During the speech, Blumenthal said, Rachel, the speech is getting boring and paranoid, yada, yada. Then it goes on to say they talk about the confrontation. The video has been seen by an estimated 1.3 million times, and liked on more than 14,700 occasions, yada, yada. And then they talk about what else he said in the video. Newsweek has contacted Blumenthal via the Gray Zone website and the Truman Center for comment. So this article was published on the 4th. Okay. This is today. This incident happened Friday. They said they contacted him for a comment. 9 times out of 10, he's probably not going to be able to come to you right now. Obviously, like Max is very busy, but this is crazy. They go on and continue to smear the gray zone. It says the gray zone has been previously been criticized by Elliot Higgins, founder of investigative journalism group Bellingcat. They go into that, yada, yada. But what's really interesting, now they bring in the China conspiracy. Blumenthal's outlet has also been criticized by numerous news outlets over its denial of China's repression. They're talking about the Uyghurs group, which, by the way, it says China denies allegations of human rights abuses. Human Rights Watch and other organizations have published reports that accuse Beijing of crimes against humanity. Crimes against humanity can be separate from this particular issue. So that is something I did say, we showed on the show before. The State Department actually said they did not have evidence to prove that there was a genocide against the Uyghurs. I talked about that on this show months ago. This goes to show you how bad. By the way, these are the people that are considered journalists. So let's go on. At the end of the article, this is the funny part. Oh, those are comments there. Hold on. Request, reprint, and licensing, submit correction, or view editorial headlines. Maybe people should reach out to that to do that. There's plenty of comments there. But it's just, these are the journalists, guys. These aren't bloggers. This is the real news. This is who we're supposed to listen to. While Rachel Maddow is laughing at Substack articles. Now, Max was on Jimmy recently. I do want to play just a clip from that. Let me go ahead and I just want to fast forward there, where he did talk about this event a little bit here. So here we go.
What is true con, Max?
Well, first of all, it's a true con. Second of all, it is the conference of the Truman Center, which started out as a Truman National Security Project. And as you can see, it's sponsored by Global Merchants of Death and like Beacon Global Strategies, which is a consulting firm that advises both Republican and Democratic national security hardliners. So the Uniparty, Palantir, you can see there, they do predictive policing, pre-crime surveillance. They're founded by Peter Thiel. You would thought these people hate Peter Thiel, but they just like surveillance more, I guess.
Again,
Peter Thiel, that's the guy that owns Rumble, if I remember correctly.
Palantir, I mean, people aren't nerds. That's from the Lord of the Rings, that the wizard that was bad, it was a crystal.
We're going to scoot past Kurt. Sorry.
And so all the people in that conference are trying to kind of network, and many of them are, minorities or openly gay people who want to work in the Pentagon or work for national security contractors or the CIA, whatever.
We need more psychopaths of color.
Pretty much like they want to mass murder as many people of color abroad as possible, but doing so in the name of what they call DEI or diversity, DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity. Or was it DEI? Anyway,
DEI.
Is DEI, not die. It's I know, because we actually did that when I was in higher ed. I just want to correct that, because you're supposed to say it DEI, because if you say DIE, it's die. So it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sorry, just wanted to fix that there.
Maddow was
It should be
Maddow was the
DIE.
keynote speaker. And Maddow's speech was all about, it was so boring. And it was like,
What did you say at the first line?
His first line was, Maddow, this speech is boring and paranoid.
That was my favorite part.
I mean, I give a little review. And she starts her speech at like Lake Geneva in 1931. The editor of Time magazine didn't like Jews in New York, so he moved there and started getting bags of cash from German Nazi sympathizers. And you can see where it's going. Then he opposed World War II. So she's building up to, if you oppose the Ukraine proxy war, you're a Nazi. You're probably getting paid by Russia. And then she started at the end, bringing it home, and she was summoning the waterworks. Here's why this really matters.
She was crying like that.
A prosecutor, she was like, you could see her summoning fake emotion. A prosecutor refuses to go after a president for political expediency, and we've been infiltrated by foreign powers. And that's when I just kind of got up and was like, enough of this crap.
Oh my.
Yeah. So basically, this was a conference for people like Rachel Maddow, people who want to continue to spew State Department talking points, people who are approved to do so. Again, she's not a journalist. She's making over like $30,000 they were paying her an episode. Is ridiculous how much they were paying her. And she lied to people for years. And again, there was no accountability, no repercussions because of what she did. But imagine if that was someone in independent media who sat up there and lied. First of all, we wouldn't have been able to get through that many years of telling the lie. YouTube would have removed us immediately. We would have been moved immediately in reference to independent media. Everything would have been shut down. Your PayPal, your Patreon, all of those things would have been removed from you. But Rachel Maddow was allowed to lie to you for years. And what happened? They gave her a raise. So it's something that we need to point out. I actually put something up about Rachel Maddow too, and then I'll get to Ohio. It was a meme. It was funny, or at least I thought it was funny. Yeah, there it is. I put this up about Rachel Maddow. It says Rachel Maddow makes $30,000 a day pretending to be a progressive liberal while reading neoliberal corporatist propaganda off a teleprompter in between commercials for big oil, big pharma, and the military industrial complex. Where's the lie? So there you go. So kudos to Max Blumenthal for standing up to Rachel Maddow. It needed to be said. It needed to be said. It needs to be said. And people should continue to tell her, like, if you see her in public, like, let me be careful how I say this. If you get the opportunity to speak to Rachel Maddow, you should ask her, why did she lie to people for years about Russiagate? Ask her. Coming to a Substack near you. Ridiculous. Thank you for the super chat, Justin. Why not organize a group of people to take over city council and mayor? You can do that. You can. I mean, actually, I felt like that's what happened in Nevada, right? Social Democrats kind of like took over, but then the Democratic Party kicked them out or something. It's really a weird situation there. Oz says MSBS should be shuttered for their role in fomenting war and is culpable in the deaths of all involved. Pachico says Substack is journalism. Maddow's show is a deep state infomercial. There you go. Zombie in the air. Pro-establishment lies are forgiven. And Terry says, welcome to Propagandize America. That's right. There you go.